Hello, hi, Yaokai, how are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. So we are at the No Code Week, No Code Week 26 in Frankfurt. We're in June. It's important also to place sometimes the space in time because maybe people will listen to this after we record it. I'm very happy to have a chance to talk with you. You're building a product, you're building a no-code tool.
Yeah.
So I want to know a bit more about this, about you, why you're doing this, what's your take, but maybe to start with, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Yaokai, and I'm a software engineer by training and by trade. And I started coding my first line in 1998. So it's quite a long time ago. And I lived in Europe for 7 years.
Okay.
I was born in China. I moved here not Frankfurt, but Rome in 2002. Then I went to Cambridge for undergrad in 2007, and then 2010 I moved to the US. I've been there since.
Okay. And before that you tell us the story about Momen, which kind of company did you work for? What was your experience as
So previously I worked for a startup. I was one of the early engineers. I joined them in 2011, end of 2011. And it was a SaaS company. It's called Medallia. It does survey analytics for Fortune 500s. So basically, we build a large real-time analytics engine for survey data, and I worked on the back end.
Okay, so you know a lot about having massive data.
Yeah.
So because you were talking about this yesterday at
Yes.
some of the workshop you did. Okay, so what triggered you in doing Momen?
Okay, so the initial trigger was like in between 2015 and 18. I was building a bunch of side projects, ranging from like restaurants QR code ordering, and that wasn't very prevalent then, to things like RFID self checkout, to things like visually configurable investment strategy back testing tool for investment bankers or stuff like that, or financial advisors. So among those, I realized the core piece of logic within these projects are actually quite small. Most of the time is spent on setting up environment, setting up the database, creating database structure, creating an API, make sure the front end talks to it, and writing CSS, which I always hated. So that was what I felt. And in 2018, the company I worked for went public. So I got my share and left. And then end of 2019, I started Momen.
Okay.
Solving exactly that issue. It's really to scratch my own itch, because I thought, like, you shouldn't need 4 years of higher education to build a SaaS. Maybe for something that's like really high, huge scale, high concurrency. Yeah, maybe, but no.
Okay, it's interesting because you build it for you, but you know how to code.
Yes.
So building this also allows people who don't know how to code to do the same.
I was just thinking, like, people who don't know how to code but are smart should be able to build things, right? You shouldn't require 4 years in a university to do this.
Yeah, definitely. I remember there was a documentary that my friend Stan did, where he interviewed the founder of Bubble, and he was saying, like, it's unfair that people who don't have friends who are engineers are not able to build something.
I think we had similar ideas,
and that's pretty cool. So when you started, what you wanted to build a full stack tool?
Yeah.
What was the idea, like a full visual, like the...
Yeah, because one thing I realized, like, most of that, I broke down things into basically database, front end, which we already know can be done visually. Database, we know things can be visually built. Deployment, we know it can be automated. Kubernetes is already there. And API, we know that GraphQL is there, and therefore we can design APIs that fit. In fact, back then there was Hasura. which we borrowed the idea very heavily. So all the pieces are there, and I could imagine all the pieces represented visually. The only thing that was not entirely visual was the workflows, right? But even that, back then, I think Zapier was already a thing, even in 2019. So we know things can be represented visually, and one thing I did not know, which is kind of funny, I did not know Bubble existed.
Okay.
So if I did, I probably wouldn't have done a full stack. I probably would just stick to a backend because that's really where I'm most comfortable. But I didn't. So we built the front end, and the first thing was, I think, when that was like half a year after starting development, was we are now able to show a dynamic list on the page with a condition to change how things are showing. That was the only thing. We couldn't even, there was no workflow. There was no external APIs. Obviously, there's no payment, no permission, no nothing, but it shows. So that was like the first moment where we're like, okay, now we can hook things up from the database all the way to the front end. And then we kind of never abandon the front end because now clients rely on that.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about the evolution? I mean, and then we're going to arrive to time now where people talk a lot about vibe coding, about AI. I mean, but like the first few years, so you started pretty early. I mean, 2019 is when it's also about the time I think WeWeb started, where many, like the second generation of no-code tools, I would say, Glide, Airtable was already picking up. But I mean, so how are the first few years of building this and the journey?
Mostly just patching ourselves, because now I think about it, I think it's a very stupid idea to start with something that's so big, right? If I were just to do like a visual database builder, I probably would have done much better because I could have done that much faster and in a better way. So first few years is infrastructure and rebuilding infrastructure. The first infrastructure is database. We always used Postgres. We've always used real tables. And then initially we were using Hasura as the GraphQL API generator for our database. And we spent like a year to replace Hasura because it does not support, it has no way to hook in workflows that's transactional. And I always had a very strong belief that people should be given transactional semantics, especially if they're not a coder, right?
Can you explain? You mentioned this also yesterday, and can you explain?
Transactional, yeah. So transaction is a database concept. So when you what you really do is you say begin transaction, you do a bunch of stuff on different tables, and in the end you do commit transaction. That's how you do it. And then if you do it that way, then a database gives you a lot of guarantees, such as if you touched a row, you wrote onto a row, then other people can't overwrite it at the same time.
Until the transaction
commits, right? And if you hit an error midway, everything gets rolled back. You never have like half-done stuff. You never have like things like I have transfer money from A to B. I subtracted $50 from A, but I haven't gotten around to putting into B, and suddenly power outage or something, right?
Yeah.
You never have that phantom money or something. So, and then it gets even worse the more steps you have. And then I always thought like, if I build a system that does not give the user transactional semantics, I think that's a bad system. So in order to achieve that, we had to ditch Hasura entirely and build our own thing. That obviously costed a lot of time and money. But yeah. And then after that, we did, I think by 2022, that's when the system was first time like fully ready. At that point, we had API integration, we had workflows, and we call them action flows on the back end. We had a front end, we have database connection, so that's all there. But we we're not very happy with our type system. So the other thing that I have very strong opinions about is a strong type system. I think types are the thing that cuts down search space for people, and it prevents you from making unnecessary mistakes, right? Not writing $10 into price in like $10 in text, right? You shouldn't be able to do that. So we wanted to make sure the type system carries all the way from the front end to the database and everywhere in between. Our initial type system was not very comprehensive, so we like rebuilt the entire type system from ground up. So now everywhere in the system is typed. And last year, so things keep progressing. Right? Last year, when AI came about, which is like 2023, right? People started talking about AI is going to replace no code. And at that point, my thinking was, if a person wants to retain control over their product, then they must be able to comprehend it. And therefore, that there lies our value, because we're easier to be understood. And if you are a front-end only tool, you were in really tough time at that point. I think I realized that by end of 23, front end is going to be in so much trouble, because it is very easy to understand. A person can very easily work backwards from the end result, the rendering result. They can see where things went wrong. But which means like front end visual builders is going to be hard to justify.
There was too much competition from like
just
what we call now vibe coding.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And front end is safer. There is less security scaling issues. It's easier to host.
Yeah,
like all those like problems and difficulties comes with the back end.
Exactly. Yeah. So at that point, I think for that entire year, from 2003 to now, what we were doing is preparing the system to be usable by AI. We always thought we were going to build on top of the visual layer, but obviously you're not going to ask AI to click a mouse. It could, but it's very inefficient. AIs like APIs. So we spent like a whole year getting all the clicks that the user do to become APIs that AI can call. So what really happens is, in our editor, when you click those things, it's an actually API call within the front end to a core we call the schema store. So then we can just expose that schema store's API to AI. And that's what we've been working on now. In fact, I've been releasing we've already released like 4 or 5 different versions of our Momen MCP within the past month. But that's not because we suddenly woke up and thought, oh, AI is this great thing, we should connect to it. It's like we finally managed all of the infra in order for AI to connect into it. And we always believe that having AI to directly generate our own domain-specific language is a bad idea, right? And having AI directly generate code that can no longer be visualized is also a bad idea, because then that makes us no different than just a plain Claude code, right? Why would you use this when you can use Claude code to generate the same code?
Yeah, can you explain a little bit what's DSL, domain-specific language?
And
how it's specific also to your approach?
Yeah. So DSL really is the center of Momen. So it defines the system's behavior, from database structure to workflow to imported APIs to AI agents that's specified. So a DSL is domain specific, therefore it is not recognized outside their domain. In this particular case, it's the domain is Momen, right? It has a bunch of assumptions. For example, it assumes that we're going to be deployed on Kubernetes, assumes that it's going to be a Postgres underneath, assumes React is in the front end. And in fact, that DSL is transpiled into different things when our system is working. Now, AI models did not know about this.
Yeah.
So you have to somehow let them operate on it. You could ask AI to directly generate the DSL.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
try to give them some sort of
some
documentation, some examples, and
but that's a horrible idea because
it might work 80% of the time or something like this.
yeah, but
Maybe
the 20%, your program only works if it works 100% of the time, right?
0, 1,
so it's completely pointless, and that's why we always thought tool use is the thing to constrain AI's behavior, so that it can produce correct structure for our thing, and also. In addition to that, we also believe that AI will benefit just like human from types. Our type system's output is always given back to the AI at every step. Like if there's an error, at that end of that step, you already know, right? So AI then it will steer itself back to the correct path much quicker than if you waited until the end. So it's almost like an incremental compilation that we have going on there.
Cool.
So that's our approach. And DSLs are actually used by a lot of companies, which is a very common approach. Figma uses DSL. That's behind their Figma Designer. Figma Make actually doesn't use a DSL, which is why initially they were not talking to each other.
Okay, because it goes straight to code.
Exactly, straight to code. Yeah. And Lovable doesn't use a DSL.
Yeah.
The downside of that is, well, it exposes a bunch of code because that's what AI wrote. Yeah. And I think Flutterflow does something with DSL initially with their Flutterflow. Then they had their Dreamflow thing, which is completely code. Right. Yeah. So again, that Dreamflow then doesn't talk with Flutterflow.
That's super interesting. Do you think they did that because it was faster? Probably it's just like to do a second product.
Yeah.
And you don't mess, which is a shame because they had built like an entire visual programming.
And then they abandoned it.
Yeah. And then they just kind of go to vibe coding and don't benefit from
the first one, right? At all, in fact. Like in that case, you are starting completely afresh and you directly compete with Claude Code.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I think that's a place I don't want to go. I don't want to compete with Claude Code because that's a losing battle.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to have cheaper tokens because they produce them. They know their models the best, how to use that. Yeah. And they have more training material than any of us. So why would I go there? I'd rather have Claude Code work with me than compete against me. Right? And then my little niche of the market is for people that needs visual understanding of the product and want to retain control and not building something that's, for a weekend. So that's been our approach. We never went the other way.
This is something people, I think, like non-technical people have a hard time understanding. It's like the benefit of having a visual environment after the AI
built
work.
It.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it also, in that case, like it also slows us down, right? Because we had to build all this infra so that AI can operate on it. And even to today, we don't have the infra for AI to build the front end. We chose to let the AI build the back end first because AI can already build a front end and people really don't care about the front end builder, right? So, and the other nice choice we had, which is I think also lucky, is from the very, very beginning, we insisted on human readable API, which is something Bubble doesn't have. Bubble used to have this Elasticsearch weird XYZ thing with their M searches, M gets, which AI can't operate on. And the other thing we insisted on is self-introspectable API. So the API has an introspection API. It's like a meta API from the day one. And all the, because we use GraphQL and we stuck with GraphQL's strong types, so everything is typed. So if AI were to write a query, it will know before it's even run to the server that the query is wrong, right? So it kind of carries, you can see the way we design things is carried through, right? Type should be everywhere. everything should be human readable. We should optimize for debuggability because somebody needs to read that stuff. We need to verify the query is correct. And it was lucky because AI operates at the same level as human language. So good thing that now our API is very easy to be understood by AI. It was just a good coincidence, I think.
Okay, super interesting. So what would be the usage? What would you recommend to maybe some examples of what people can build, or if even people that have built maybe things
so
with
I'll give a favorite example of mine. As I said, we started pretty early, but early days, obviously, a thing is shit. So when we were still shit, one of the early users found us. I don't know why. I don't know how. The guy has a day job as a fund manager. He's a private equity fund manager. He has a hobby of collecting sports cards. Okay. So initially, the thing he built was very simple. A list of collections and what he has, so he knows which collections he has that's complete. So you can imagine that's fairly simple, just a bunch of lists. And then because he's a collector, he has collector friends. Okay, so his collector friend says, that looks nice. I would like that as well. So that's fine. Everybody gets their own account, have their own private collections, but they have a public registry of curated list of all the cards that's there. That list has now grown to about 6 million.
Oh, wow.
So, but that's over like 4 years. Actually, maybe that's close to 5 now, but 4 or 5 years. And as the platform grew, we introduced like payment integration in end of 2022, I think. He started introducing monetization into it because people wanted to trade. And when they're trading, they wanted an escrow. So he became the escrow. And people wanted to grade their cards to send to grade agencies. But grading agencies have minimum order quantities. I think it's 50 or something. Not everybody has 50 cards to go in one go. So he becomes a reseller of grading. And then people wanted to group buys, and then you can imagine things just grew and grew. So now he has about 60,000 users in his app, and he makes his revenue. I don't know about his profit. His revenue, last time he told me, is $800,000
per year.
Wow! And he still has his day job. And imagine the number of orders that he's processing. These are not, the ticket size is not, let's say, $1,000 per order. No, these are $100 or $50 orders. He had to build a lot of automation in order to cut down his time, right? You need to know where inventory is. You need to track the logistics. If he were to do that all by himself, he would have gone crazy. So he built all the automation on Momen as well, integrating with the shipment company, integrating the recognition of cards to identify which one belongs to whom, stuff like that. So so the guy is fairly crazy, and then his business kind of grew as the platform grew. Currently, I think he pays me about $350 a month dollars. So, and that brings to the answer to the question that what is Momen good for? Momen's good for data intensive and large scale stuff.
Okay.
And we are especially built a calculator for that purpose. You can in Momen pricing, there's a calculator for pricing, which is based on AI, which is also built in Momen. You can ask it if I have 1,500,000 users, 500,000 users or whatever, something like that, and doing a particular thing, how much would it cost? We have an AI that breaks everything down into the actual user flow, and then from there to operations, from operations to resource consumption, from consumption then to pricing.
Okay, so his bill, for instance, the user you're mentioning, is based. It's because he has a lot of data. Also,
Well,
it's like
he has a lot of data. He also has a lot of usage. Yeah. So
it's not the number of users, for instance.
no, we don't charge by number.
Yeah,
we consider ourselves as cloud resellers.
Yeah. So it's like the compute kind of
Yeah,
like
it's only compute.
what it
Compute,
needs.
storage, bandwidth. Those are things we charge for.
All right. Okay. Very clear. And so just to come to these days now, so what's coming next for Momen, and also in the general landscape, what do you think is coming with all those AI things? And
so for Momen, obviously, one thing is like integrating more AI, right? There's going to be an in-app AI agent to build Momen, but also you're going to be able to build that from Cloud Code. So that's what we're doing, and we'll probably do the front end as well later this year. And that will happen by the time you hear this, it's probably already happened. I mean, the back end stuff. And we're also releasing iOS as a new front end. And then Android will probably come in another 2 months or so. We actually I had a single guy working on iOS and Android since early last year. So that's us. And then I think in the general space, I think if I were Flutterflow, I will be very worried. I wouldn't know where I go because all the difficulty now lies in the backend. How long that backend mode persists, I don't know. Excuse me. So,
but for instance, someone could build a backend in Momen, and the front end in Flutterflow.
Yeah,
that could work.
Yeah, they can.
Because that's the interesting point. I feel like I agree with you. I mean, like the front end, more than ever, there's so many options to do it. I think the visual ones are still valid, but they kind of hard to justify.
Yeah, alone, it's just not worth the money. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's and it's you have limits. It's long, but for the backend, it's very different. For the backend, and you did a little talk where you were comparing them, and so there is not so many options. They're quite technical. Like the best one, I would say, I agree with you.
Supabase,
Supabase is quite technical. It's definitely not what we would call no code. Maybe low code somehow, but it's not. But so I think it makes sense. So probably Momen is somewhere close to Xano. It's in the same space a little bit. Or would you make the difference?
We will be very similar to Xano, but on that topic, based on my own comparison, obviously I don't know how their code is written, right? But I have tried a couple of things. We will be much cheaper to run at scale, and we're doing. I think they recently, like 2025, 2026, moved to a proper table model. They used to rely on just JSON blobs for their rows, but they still don't offer constraints, I think. So whether we offer constraint, I think that really is based on like how much you value like convenience versus power, right?
And the reliability, maybe.
Yeah, because without constraints, it's very easy to set up. The migration is very easy because you just change you just set that column to be non-nullable, and everything that was already there doesn't really matter. They only check when it's inserting, right? In our case, you have to clear the entire column, or you have to like fill the entire column before you can set it to no, because we have to guarantee everything else. So it's correct. That's what the database guarantees. It's more trouble. Whether it's worth it, I think it's only worth it if you have a real business. If it's a toy project, no.
Yeah, this is also, I think, is important to understand. Like, I mean, there are many different tools because also there are many different projects. There are many different profiles of builders.
Yes.
And so people need to find the one that's matches
their skill
context
level and the project that they want to build, right? Is it a business that you want to build, or is it just a weekend fun project?
Super interesting. I have one last question that's not really related to what we're discussing, but I'm just curious because since you're from China, but you live in San Francisco, in US.
Yeah.
So I feel like those are the two I would say like centers of AI right now.
Yeah.
Now. And what do you see as a difference? What's the I don't know. It's
I think in terms of the models, you can clearly see that the top models are all US closed source, and then the second tier are basically all Chinese open weight, right? And
they're fairly close now, would you say, or do you feel like the
there's
US?
a clear difference.
Yeah,
There's a clear difference.
Okay, with the frontier model, really.
Yes, the frontier models. There's a clear difference. And then also, one funny thing I noticed in the US, it was never like that. Like half of the people working on large language model training are Chinese.
Okay,
so it's basically a bunch of Chinese in China and a bunch of Chinese in the US. I mean, in tech, there's always been a high concentration of Chinese, but it was never like half. It's usually about 10%-ish. 10%, maybe 15%. This was a very strange high concentration. That's just a side note. But the approach people take with AI application and then AI infra, I think US is far superior. Okay. There are people doing different facets of the infra. There are people that are just on evaluation. There are people on like building whatever they call that now, like harness, whatever stuff they call it, right? So every single facet of the AI infra, somebody's working on it in US. In China, they seem to just do one thing together. And in China, not many startups doing AI related stuff. It's all
okay. Because I was wondering also, like if you take a step back, like more into the what people are building with AI.
Okay, what people are building with AI in China, nothing really.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason is regulation.
Okay.
China on AI is probably more regulated than here. So, give an example. If I were to build a weekend project to save commonly used prompts, and I charge you $5 a month. Whether someone buys it is a different thing, but you could have released that in a weekend.
Yeah,
very doable, right?
Yeah,
you can't do that in China. Why? First of all, you can't have a website within a weekend because you need to register for the right to have a website.
That's interesting.
So that you have to go to the government, right? Second thing, in order to do that, you need an IP. And that IP can only be there if you bought a server from AliCloud or something. And in here, like, you don't think about IP.
Yeah, you can.
I don't really care, right?
Yeah, you can host anything.
Whatever, whatever, yeah. So that's second problem. Third problem, you can't charge. In order to charge money online, you need to become a merchant, which means you have to become a company. A person cannot do it.
Okay.
And even worse, you can't charge recurring money unless you have a capital. There's a capital requirement in China for the company that you have registered. You can't just put in $5 call a company. No, guess the lower limit.
I don't know. In France, for a long time, like a while ago, it was 10K.
10K. Okay, 10K is a lot of money, right? Yeah. It's not beyond the reach of most people. It's expensive.
Yeah.
If you were to charge money recurringly in China, you need 20 million yuan divided by 8 that you get euros.
Okay, so it's in millions.
Yeah, it's going to be something like 3 million, 2 million euros.
Okay, well, yeah, it's
so
big company,
you can see, like, that's why nobody is building anything inside China to do that. And if you were to sell stuff outside China as a Chinese, you can't use Stripe.
Yeah.
So all the roads are closed.
Okay, interesting. Okay, that's very cool. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I'm quite curious because I feel like there is. Maybe it's also because I'm hoping like that we need alternatives to American tools. I mean, as a European, and so we're a bit looking in France. Unfortunately, like in Europe, we don't have a very strong player. Maybe we have Mistral. But in China, we can see like they have in terms of like the models at least.
It's all the big companies the models are fine. They're all driven by the big companies, and then application-wise, Like here, you have no coding and individual hackers is a thing, right? People kind of know that you can't survive. Because of the reason I just stated, that's not a thing in China.
Yeah. Okay. Right? Yeah. Super interesting. Well, thank you so much for this. Where people can follow you if they want to know.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Yaokai Jiang, Yaokai Jiang.
I will put the links in the notes.
And then there's only one, so you can find me very easily on LinkedIn. And then if you want to find Momen, it's just moment.app, Moment without a T, because that's too expensive to buy. So
yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah.
Perfect. No, it's a cool name. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.